food and support for local families in need. You can help by donating food or volunteering. Visit franklinfoodpantry.org or call 508-528-3115. That's 508-528-3115. A broadcasting outreach of Franklin.tv. You're listening to WFPR-LP 102.9, Franklin Public Radio. You can listen online at WFPR.FM. Thanks for listening.
So if we don't see you tanned, Ryan, each year, we're gonna know you. That's what he's doing the junket, Mike.
Me too.
Jamie, is the issue the top camera?
I don't think so. Oh. It's still on though, right?
This is on.
Yeah.
Chris, I also think you're muted. So
Oh, I am?
Yeah, I think you gotta unmute.
Okay. Three votes? Three. Yeah.
We good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Being at 7:03, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes of April 5th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Second?
Are there any questions, comments about the minutes? We need to do a roll call vote on the approval of the minutes.
Okay, I approve Monique Doyle, Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Phyllis. Yes. Dave? Dave? Approval of the minutes?
He said yes.
He
Yep.
did. Okay, thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
And Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, do you want to go through the master plan, or we just want to go to the resolution?
Through just the, I'm gonna try to point to page 9 on the plan, just so I can give everybody an update on the numbers,
Yep.
the revenue numbers. So I know, for folks that are watching at home or here, there's not much that has changed in the master plan, version 1 to version 2. I know it came out a little late today, but we're trying to get through all the material. And I just want to go through an overview of the numbers that changed on revenue projections. On page 9, most of the rest of the content is either the same or the numbers were changed to reflect the borrowing amounts from Maple Hill. Happy to answer any questions on that in a moment. But folks go to page 9, you'll see at the top FY23 revenue projections. And for those at home, you can go onto the town website. The document was updated on the town calendar for tonight's meeting, and so people can follow along. And this will also be posted on the CPA website if it hasn't already. But FY23 revenue projections, which is the surcharge and state match, in between last meeting and this meeting, the state did come out with its projection, which was a 35% minimum match. So for folks at home, for every dollar the town contributes in CPA, we get 35 cents for every dollar coming back to us from the state.
Jim,
And-
isn't that 35% match on what was collected last year?
Correct. So there is a notation, the state estimated 35, and it's based on FY '22 local income. So the chart above on the first one says 1.397778 is our estimated local surcharge contribution from the 2% surcharge after all the deductions and exemptions. That's FY '23, that's prospective. And then the $465,291 is the state match based off the FY '22 numbers that Mr. Feely just pointed out. And that gets you your cumulative FY '23 anticipated committed budget at 1.887 million exactly. Not sure exactly how that perfectly worked out, but it does. And the state will distribute those monies to the treasurer collector, I believe, in November this calendar year. So in other words, that's generally what's available for the coming fiscal year. As you notice, and for the first round of this plan, Alicia and I talked about trying to set up some, as CPA matures and expenditures happen and bills get paid, we've talked about through the fiscal year trying to come up with a better accounting system than just our math in this document, but it'll take a couple years to kind of refine that. And then the second chart is really the undesignated CPA fund balances, basically what's left over. Earlier in the document, we labeled out the cost that we've already paid for through CPA expenses. As folks kind of hopefully know, with the exception of Maple Hill, which was not we didn't pay any bills in FY '22, we essentially have a full year of collections without any expenditures. So there is some money in the bank within reason. Which means the total FY '23 total budget available. This does not include, by the way, on that final chart, the appropriations that are being recommended tonight. So those numbers, I'm happy to connect the dots for folks. Based on the appropriations this evening, the open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation fund requirements for FY '22 and FY '23 are pretty much met. Pretty darn close. There's a little open space money, but I have a feeling by the end of FY '23, we'll find a way to spend enough to make that matching requirement, which is really good, because you remember in your training from the coalition, which makes common sense, I don't even know why I have to point it out, you take care of the 10% obligations first, and then you have that larger pie of discretionary funding to use for any type of project. So for FY '23, we're looking at an administrative account of just over 94,000, which is 5%. The open space fund balance from both years committed would be 321,640 for both open space, housing, and preservation. And then a budgeted reserve, which includes the money that was collected in FY '22, as well as the prospective commitment, is 2.14 million for the FY '23. Again, assuming the projects tonight, particularly the Nason Street tot lot, the Nason Street tot lot will be coming out of the designated balance in that fund. So if that's approved, there'll be 300,000 less there. And that's it. On the next page, on page 10, there's a big gap, but on page 11, you'll see here we did actually include the official borrowing schedule for Maple Hill. For those who are curious, it was a 3.38% interest rate, which is 0.12% below what we projected. Pretty good. Not too bad. Close call. For those that are really interested, I know a few of you, this borrowing schedule did take place. The unfortunate events of the Federal Reserve, but the good events where it could have been worse, this did include the AAA bond rating in this borrowing schedule. So this is a pretty accurate interest rate given the times, a good baseline to project out into the future if there are any other purchases. And I think that's probably the summary, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have any questions? Do we want to move to the first resolution? motion on the first resolution? So, someone needs to make a motion.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? So what this resolution is it's the allocations of our estimates for fiscal year 2023.
Exactly, just for the surcharge, just for the local surcharge.
Right. Yep. Should we?
And the state match, excuse me, that was both, my bad. It's for the surcharge and the state match from the
fiscal
budget.
2022
Three budget.
match and the fiscal 2023 estimate.
Exactly. Yep.
Should we read this, or is this public information that people should have access to?
It's posted, online.
Yeah, it's in the packet.
So we don't need to read the resolution.
I think just the, probably just the motion that's on the resolution would probably be the best.
Would the clerk read the motion?
Be it moved and voted by the town council.
Oh, and CPC in this case.
I'm sorry, the CPC, that the sum of $1,887,000 be appropriated or reserved as indicated above from the Community Preservation Fund annual revenues in the amounts recommended by the Franklin Community Preservation Committee in fiscal year 2023. This resolution shall become effective according to the provisions of the Town of Franklin Home Rule Charter.
Do we need to amend this, or is that okay? Do we need to make a motion to amend to say CPC or anything like that?
She just did.
We don't need to vote.
Nope.
Okay. All right.
So that should say CPC on it?
Yes, yeah. It was not your error.
Oh,
That's correct.
Right. So there's been a motion made and seconded, and if the clerk would call roll, please.
okay. I vote to accept. Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Phyllis?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Now, next is resolution 22-37.
Shall I read it? Yep.
Someone should make a motion.
Move to read the
Approved.
resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, on this resolution, there's these 5 items, and we'll be voting on them all at once unless someone objects and they want to do them individually. If the clerk would read the motion then.
Motion for 22-37, be it moved and voted by the town council.
Community Preservation Committee.
CPC, okay. That the sum of $905,000 be appropriated from the community preservation reserves in the amounts and for the projects indicated above in fiscal year 2023, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation. This resolution shall become effective according to the provisions of the Town of Franklin Home Rule Charter.
Does anyone have any questions? Jamie, I actually have one.
Sure.
So these amounts, are these quotes or POs that we already have? So that these, we know these are the amounts, it's not gonna be an overrun or?
That's correct. Ryan has worked with a consultant on Nason Street tot lot, and that's the accurate price. The Franklin Ridge Affordable Housing is the minimum amount for both years, the 10% from the affordable housing. The Red Brick Schoolhouse is actually going out to bid tomorrow, and so that's an accurate amount. The cupola, the same thing, and the clerk vault records was based on a quote that we had somewhere in the document. It's
Right, I
linked in
saw
there.
that,
Yeah, so all of those are based on real pricing, real numbers. Obviously, we hope the bids come in lower,
Right.
but those are accurate.
Does anyone?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So does this cover the 10% that we're spending for the beach group? I mean, like for the historic preservation?
It comes close. I think it's like a hair shy for both open
Yeah.
space and historic.
Right.
But by the time all the revenues come in throughout the fiscal year, we'll easily be able to meet those 10% one way or another.
But because we've allocated the money, it's irrelevant in regards to the match.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Clerk will call roll, please.
Monique Doyle, yes. Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Phyllis? Yes. Dave?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Next is Resolution 22-38. Need a motion?
Motion 22-38, be it moved and voted by the CPC
Correct.
in the sum of $271,489 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Open Space Reserve Fund to pay the annual Maple Hill Land Bond Debt Service. This resolution shall become effective according to the provisions of the Town of Franklin Home Rule Charter.
So we need a second on that.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, we don't need a second.
We do.
Oh, okay.
If there's no questions, the clerk will call roll.
Okay, Monique Doyle, yes. Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Phyllis? Yes. Dave?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes. Jamie, do you have anything else?
No, just if anybody has any questions about moving forward or anything else.
Any questions, and do you have an idea of when we should meet again?
Well, that's a great question. I probably sound exasperated because there's a lot of work to go manage too.
Could I just make one quick point about
Sure.
that? You guys probably spent months doing this, and we went through it.
Yeah, sorry.
I know, it's,
I wanted to question something, just.
Well, I think that shows what a good job you did.
Yes.
no,
No, the job is really well done.
Yeah.
It's
No,
very
it-
well explained.
yeah,
Everything's very well done.
good, good.
Absolutely.
I think Mason Street's a little high, but we'll let that go, Ryan.
Well,
I think it was a great job putting it all together.
great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
I think the only thing I'd mention is after the bids, after we get bids back for Nason Street and we work on the playground over there and we have a better sense of what that's going to be, it'll probably honestly break ground in the spring, is my guess. The red brick, as I mentioned, will be this summer, cupola probably this fall. I have no doubt that our town clerk will jump right into action on the records stuff. The question then is going to be, well, really, now we have a kind of an open application process. Once we hit the new fiscal year, somebody could go online and fill out an application for a project, and we can meet as needed. So in other words, you have to have the required public hearing every year, which we'll probably do in January again, but you don't have to wait to appropriate to January, have a hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So my guess is that unless any other open space projects become available, or there's an application that comes through that we would, want to put forth and could carry out a meeting, I'd say we're probably off until September, but you never know. So folks, I think, really should, be aware that, we may call for a meeting over the summer at some point.
So if Nason Street's gonna break ground in the early spring, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question, but given that timing, will Ryan have a tan?
I think his goes through the winter. I don't know if you have any other updates on the timeline, Ryan. I think we were looking at spring, right?
We're looking to, prep the site in the fall,
Yeah.
late fall,
Yeah.
and get ready for installation in the early spring.
Is that park currently usable?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Does anyone have anything else?
So is the red brick school this summer or next?
This summer,
Oh,
yeah. Just the exterior, the wood restoration, repointing the brick, de-leading the building was really what got us down this path, because all the paint is lead paint outside. It'll include some of the restoration work on the windows, the trim, and up on the top of the roof, in addition to some other odds and ends like signage in the doors, and try to at least get the outside kind of phase one. My guess is the tenants, the Metro West Robotics Club, they seem to be very happy there. It's wonderful. They're doing a spring, summer clean out next week. And then after this phase is done, we'll try to work with them and see if there's any other structural work that needs to be done. I know the flagpole will still be needed to get done, and a few other things, but inside will be a much more complicated project than outside.
So, Jamie, I mean, obviously, the outside fine, but the inside, especially if you're doing the de-leading paint,
Yeah.
they probably have to move out of there for a while, right?
That's probably true, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we're having as part of the bid, you have to do an on-site visit for prospective bidders to go look at the property and ask questions and that sort. And so we've been working with the tenant to make sure that, they're not there when folks may be showing up.
Will they need a place to go? Is there some other place that we could offer them for whatever the timeline is to do
Yeah.
the inside?
There might be. One of the challenges they have is they have some equipment in there, one or two pieces that aren't movable, or at least without a lot of effort. But, we'll work with them. They've been great. We've been kind of going back and forth over the last couple of weeks, getting ready for this. And they're obviously willing to work with us really well on it. So it'll probably take some coordination.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a question. The red brick schoolhouse, I mean, we're doing the outside, and you said eventually we're going to be taking care of the inside as well and preserving it. Obviously it's part of our history.
I'd like to. I think when I came here over 7 years ago, I mean, that's what you hear when you come to Franklin. I mean, you hear a few things, right? Horace Mann, Ben Franklin, Red Brick Schoolhouse. And, obviously, CPA is a big game changer for all of this. I mean, I think it's no secret to anybody. One of the reasons why it's always been difficult to rehab it is funds. And just competition for cruisers, fire trucks, dump trucks, snow plows, building renovations, schools. It always kind of get kicked aside, so this was a really important project, I think, for year one. The inside will be a little bit more complicated, just because people are going to have to, at some point, Wayne, decide, do they want to keep the toilets and sinks for kindergartners?
Yeah.
Some of that stuff, dates back. Some people have memories. It's hard to know. But I think inside, there's an opportunity to still make it usable, but we're going to have to see what the community also
But
wants to do.
it's a historical site. I mean, why would we change anything inside? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. I don't think we would change much. It's just a question of, if you're going to rent it out and you're going to use it, I think you need a toilet that...
Well, does it generate that much revenue that we have to rent it out?
It generates about $2,400 a year is what the rent is. But I
So-
just want to note, as you would know, Wayne, I oftentimes hear about the longest running red brick schoolhouse in America, one-room schoolhouse in America. The reason why the Metro West Robotics Club is critical is, number one, they're a nonprofit, so they're exempt from certain regulations like ADA. And number two, they are an educational nonprofit, so it keeps that string alive. We could rent it out to a law office, or we could rent it out to a single business owner or somebody else that wants to do art inside, but then you lose that designation. And I will say it right now on the record, I really don't feel like being the town administrator who makes the decision to end that 100 or 200 years. It's just not what I'm hoping. That's a community decision, in my view, that has to get made. It's just, I found it to be a sensitive topic. Maybe some of you are familiar with that.
Well, I think it should be preserved, and we can use our funds to preserve it. I mean, one of the problems over the years with our town, in my opinion, is that we seem to knock a lot of things down and don't really do much for history. I think this committee can do a lot, and I honestly feel the red brick schoolhouse should be preserved inside and out, the way it is. I mean, that's how history is supposed to work, to my knowledge anyway. Does anyone else have a comment?
So I wouldn't disagree with you, Wayne, but I'm gonna guess that when the building was first built, there weren't any toilets or sinks in it.
Right.
So at some point, I don't know,
How far do you want to go back, basically?
right, how far do you wanna go back as opposed to how usable do you wanna make the building?
Make it
So
functional.
I think there's a fine line there, and I think when we get closer, we'll.
But usually historical buildings and sites aren't rented out for use by people. They're there for people to go observe.
Yeah.
That's what they're
Right,
preserved for.
But Jamie's point isn't, we're not renting it for the money, we're renting it so that we can keep this designation that it's been in operation all these years continuously.
So like, for example, Wayne, I mean, you could envision maybe making, in an ideal world, making the interior into some sort of museum that talks about the history of the Red Schoolhouse and basically what went on, and maybe highlighting certain people, pretty much kind of what like an extension of the historic museum, right?
Mhm.
But then you run into these issues that you have to now do all these upgrades because of wheelchair access and everything else. You lose, right, that, and I totally get that.
And you lose the
I
designation.
lose designation.
But the use of the building by the town was terminated years ago, probably 20, whatever it was, 20, 25 years ago.
It was, but it was converted over to the Benjamin Franklin Charter School, so they used it up until whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
When they moved out to their facility, you know, we had to throw a Hail Mary pass to try to get someone to come in, and the only bidder to rent that, after tons of publicity and you know, all the outreach, there was one bidder, and we happened to be lucky that the bidder was an educational related nonprofit. And all those kids are Franklin based, so it was kind of a win-win-win across the board. Just because it just struggles from, you know, it's a small space. It's just really small. The parking is really tough. You can't really use it for much more than what it's being used for now. In fact, even right now, they're maximizing virtually every square millimeter of that building. They may at some point need a bigger place. You know, for the robotics club, just because it's a popular club and it requires a lot of area and whatnot. So, you know, it's just I think Chris outlines it well, Wayne. I mean, we definitely want to preserve it. We want to preserve the inside. We want all of those goals to be achieved for the long term for the community, a museum, if you will. Honoring the Red Brick Schoolhouse might be a really good idea if we can use that as educational. I don't know if that works, but
If it's an extension of this.
if it's extension, but you know, this designation issue is really, honestly, probably one of the biggest
Maybe it'll leave that
limiting.
up to you.
Yeah, I know. There's a coalition of people there. But I got them, Robotics Club still has 6 more years on their lease,
There you go.
so I'm in safe territory for a little bit. So we'll get this project done, and then we'll take it to the next level, and we'll see what happens next.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
We need to do a roll call.
Yes. Okay, motion to adjourn. Monique Doyle, yes. Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Phyllis? Yes. Dave?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a nice
Thank
summer.
you.
Yes.